If you want to be wealthy and happy, the first place you have to look is not the market, not the economy, not your parents, and not your luck. You have to look at yourself. That's uncomfortable because it means you are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are an active participant in your own life. But that discomfort is also the doorway to meaning, and meaning is what sustains both wealth and happiness over the long term. Taking responsibility is not about self blame, it's about recognizing that your life, as it is right now, is at least partly the result of your choices, your habits, your priorities, and the way you respond to what happens to you. Psychologically speaking, human beings need a sense of agency. Without it, we become resentful, anxious, and passive. And a passive person cannot build wealth, nor can they experience deep happiness because both require engagement with reality. When people say they want to be rich, what they often mean is that they want the anxiety of financial insecurity to disappear. But money doesn't remove anxiety by itself. In fact, without responsibility, money often amplifies chaos. We've all seen examples of people who gain wealth quickly and lose it just as fast, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they lack structure. Responsibility is that structure. It's the psychological framework that allows wealth to grow and happiness to remain stable. Responsibility begins in small, almost trivial ways. How do you manage what you already have? How do you treat your time, your energy, your commitments? If you cannot handle a small amount of money with care, more money will not save you, it will expose you. This is why responsibility precedes abundance. You don't become responsible after you succeed because you are responsible. There's also a moral dimension to this. When you take responsibility for your finances, you stop viewing money as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something you steward. You budget, you plan, you delay gratification. These are not merely financial skills, they are character traits. Delayed gratification, in particular, is one of the strongest predictors of long term success. It requires you to sacrifice short term comfort for long term stability, and that capacity is deeply tied to both wealth and happiness. Now, consider happiness. Happiness is not the absence of problems, it's the sense that your problems are worth dealing with. Responsibility gives you that sense. When you voluntarily shoulder the burden of your life, even suffering becomes meaningful. And meaningful suffering is bearable. In contrast, when you avoid responsibility, life doesn't get easier. It becomes heavier, chaos accumulates, bills go unpaid, relationships deteriorate, opportunities pass by, and then bitterness sets in. At that point, people don't just lack money, they lack hope. From a philosophical standpoint, responsibility is what transforms freedom into something productive. Absolute freedom without responsibility leads to nihilism, the sense that nothing matters, that everything is arbitrary. But when you bind yourself to responsibility, you give your freedom direction. You decide consciously that certain things matter: your work, your family, your future. That decision stabilizes your psyche and aligns your actions over time. And alignment is where both wealth and happiness emerge. It's also important to understand that taking responsibility doesn't mean you control everything. Life is unfair. People are born into unequal circumstances, face different obstacles, and encounter unexpected tragedy. Responsibility doesn't deny that reality. It simply asks a different question, not why did this happen to me, but given that this happened, what is the best possible response I can make? That shift in perspective changes everything. It turns resentment into strategy and despair into action. When you adopt this mindset, you stop waiting for motivation and start acting out of duty. And paradoxically, motivation follows action, not the other way around. You take responsibility, you act, you see small improvements, and your confidence grows. Over time, those small improvements compound financially, psychologically, and emotionally. This is how ordinary people build extraordinary lives. Wealth in this sense is not just money in the bank. It's the byproduct of being someone who can be trusted with resources, with opportunities, and with responsibility. Happiness, likewise, is not a constant feeling of pleasure. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are doing what you can with what you have where you are. Once you accept responsibility for your life, the next unavoidable question is this: what are you doing with your time? Because time, not money, is the true currency of both wealth and happiness. Everyone gets 24 hours a day, regardless of talent, background, or ambition. The difference between those who build a meaningful, prosperous life and those who remain stuck is not intelligence or luck. It's how deliberately they use that limited resource. Most people believe discipline is something you apply after you become successful, as if order is a luxury you earn later. That's backwards. Discipline is the prerequisite. Without it, your time fragments, your attention scatters, and your life dissolves into a series of reactions. Psychologically speaking, a scattered mind cannot produce sustained value, and value, whether financial or personal, only emerges from focused, repeated effort over time. Think about how easily time slips away. Hours disappear into distractions that feel harmless in the moment but accumulate into years of stagnation. Social media, aimless entertainment, constant stimulation, none of these are evil in themselves. The problem is unconscious consumption. When you do not choose how you spend your time, something else will choose for you. And whatever controls your attention ultimately controls your future. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but in reality, it is the mechanism of freedom. When you impose structure on your day, you are not limiting yourself, you are protecting what matters. You are saying no to what is trivial so you can say yes to what is meaningful. This is not merely a productivity strategy, it's a philosophical stance. It's the decision to live intentionally rather than accidentally. From a psychological perspective, discipline stabilizes the nervous system. Predictable routines reduce anxiety because your mind knows what is expected. Chaos, on the other hand, keeps you in a constant state of low grade stress. When your sleep is irregular, your work inconsistent, and your goals vague, your psyche never settles. That instability makes happiness fragile and wealth nearly impossible to sustain. Consider how mastery develops in any domain. No one becomes competent, let alone excellent, through sporadic effort. Mastery is the result of daily, often boring, disciplined practice. The same applies to financial stability. Saving, investing, learning valuable skills, and building professional credibility are not dramatic acts. They are repetitive, unglamorous behaviors executed consistently over long periods of time. Discipline is what allows those behaviors to compound. There is also a moral element here. When you manage your time well, you are implicitly respecting your future self. You are refusing to sacrifice tomorrow for the comfort of today. This is deeply connected to delayed gratification, one of the most robust predictors of long term success and well being. People who can delay gratification are not denying pleasure. They are choosing a higher order pleasure, one rooted in progress, competence, and self respect. Happiness, contrary to popular belief, does not come from endless leisure. Too much unstructured time often leads to emptiness, not fulfillment. Human beings need goals, constraints, and challenges. Discipline provides that framework. It gives your day a narrative arc: effort, struggle, improvement. And it's within that arc that happiness quietly emerges, not as excitement, but as satisfaction. When discipline is absent, money becomes a false hope. People chase higher income while their habits remain disordered. But more money with poor discipline doesn't create freedom, it creates more expensive chaos. Conversely, when discipline is present, even modest resources can be transformed into stability and growth. The wealthy and happy individual is not defined by how much they earn, but by how wisely they manage what they earn and the time they invest to earn it. It's important to understand that discipline is not a personality trait reserved for a select few. It is a skill, and like any skill, it can be practiced. You start small, you set realistic schedules, you keep promises to yourself. Each act of discipline strengthens your sense of agency. Over time, your confidence grows not because life becomes easy, but because you become capable. And capability is intoxicating in the best possible way. When you know you can rely on yourself, anxiety decreases. You trust your ability to face uncertainty. That trust is the psychological foundation of both wealth and happiness. You are no longer dependent on motivation, which is fleeting. You are grounded in commitment, which is stable. So, if responsibility gives your life direction, discipline gives it momentum. It turns intention into action and potential into reality. And when you master your time instead of surrendering it, you don't just build a better schedule, you build a better self. Once responsibility has been accepted and discipline has been established, there is a deeper question that must be answered. What is all of this for? Because without meaning, responsibility becomes a burden and discipline becomes empty routine. This is where many people go wrong. They accumulate money, structure their days, and achieve outward success, yet feel an inner hollowness they cannot explain. That emptiness is the signal that wealth alone is not enough. Human beings are not designed merely to be comfortable, they are designed to be useful. A meaningful life is one in which your actions are oriented towards something beyond your immediate gratification. Psychologically, this matters more than happiness itself. Happiness fluctuates, it rises and falls with mood, circumstance, and energy. Meaning, however, endures. When you are engaged in something that genuinely matters, suffering becomes tolerable and effort feels justified. This is why people will endure extraordinary hardship for a cause they believe in, yet feel miserable in comfort when their life lacks direction. Wealth without meaning often intensifies dissatisfaction rather than relieving it. When money becomes the ultimate goal, it never delivers the sense of arrival people expect. There is always more to earn, more to protect, more to compare. Comparison, in particular, is corrosive. If your purpose is status or consumption, there will always be someone ahead of you, and your satisfaction will forever depend on external validation. Meaning frees you from that trap. It reorients your life around contribution rather than comparison. From a philosophical standpoint, meaning emerges when responsibility extends outward. You are no longer only managing your own life, you are creating value for others. That might take the form of building a business that solves real problems, mastering a skill that serves society, raising a family with care, or simply being someone others can rely on. Contribution anchors your identity. You are no longer asking, what can I get? But what can I offer? That shift transforms work from mere survival into something resembling a vocation. This is also where happiness becomes more stable and less fragile. Pleasure is immediate but fleeting. Meaning is slower but deeper. When your days are aligned with your values, you experience a quiet sense of coherence, a feeling that your efforts make sense. That coherence reduces existential anxiety. You may still struggle, but you know why you are struggling, and that knowledge steadies you. Importantly, meaning is not discovered in abstraction, it is built through action. You do not sit and think your way into purpose. You act responsibly. You apply discipline, and through sustained effort, meaning reveals itself. Often it shows up as increased responsibility, more trust, more demands, more weight to carry. And paradoxically, people who live meaningful lives tend to seek out that weight. They want to be needed. They want their absence to matter. This stands in sharp contrast to the modern obsession with comfort. Comfort promises safety but delivers stagnation. A life organized solely around avoiding discomfort becomes small and brittle. Meaning, on the other hand, requires voluntary confrontation with difficulty. It asks you to aim at something worthwhile and accept the sacrifices that come with it. but in return, it offers something comfort never can: self respect. Wealth becomes a powerful tool when it is placed in service of meaning. Money then becomes a means, not an end. It supports your values instead of replacing them. It allows you to invest in long term goals, help others, and create stability not only for yourself but for those who depend on you. In this context, wealth and happiness stop being competing goals and start reinforcing each other. There is also a deeply personal dimension to this. When your life has meaning, you are less resentful, less cynical, and less likely to blame the world for your problems. You see yourself as a contributor rather than a victim. That orientation changes how you interpret setbacks. Failure becomes feedback. Obstacles become part of the narrative rather than proof of injustice. This perspective is psychologically strengthening. It builds resilience. Ultimately, a meaningful life is one where your days are organized around what you value most and your actions reflect that hierarchy. It doesn't require perfection, it requires sincerity. You move forward imperfectly but honestly towards something that justifies your effort. And over time, that movement shapes who you become. So, if you want to be wealthy and happy, don't stop at money or even discipline. Aim higher. Build a life that serves something greater than your own comfort. Because when your wealth supports meaning and your discipline serves purpose, happiness is no longer something you chase, it is something that emerges naturally as a byproduct of a life well lived.